Hello, and welcome to Get Recc'd. I am your host, Louis Falgout.
And I am your other host, Stephen Falgout.
I feel like we need a better line than I am your other host. But
I am host number 2. The second of the hosts.
I am host 2.
I am the hostess with the mostest.
I'm sure we'll figure it out one day. So hello and welcome to our big 1-0. It's the Big 10, baby.
We're finally 10 years old. Old enough to drive, old enough to drink.
But still under the legal age of consent.
Yes.
So how are you doing today on this big anniversary, Stephen? Do you feel very excited that we have reached our centennial? Is that right?
You know, it's all built up to this. Just like 10 years of Marvel movies, what the audience may not have picked up on is on every episode we have a little through line, and this is our final Infinity War event. So if you want to go ahead and tell people what we've been building up to.
Well, we've been building up to your Rex.
That's right.
It's
so every
that exciting. There go the fireworks. Yep. Do you hear them? They're out in the distance.
Yeah, what people don't know is that this has all been an alternate reality game where the through line to every episode was that in the chat, you've been putting recommendations and we've been ignoring them, and finally we won't ignore them.
Yeah, so your choices had literally no effect on the final result of the game.
Yes.
That's the best kind of ARG.
That's the best kind, just like a Telltale game. Bazinga, am I right?
Bazooper.
Anyway.
All right.
Here we are.
I think
back at it again.
I think we should just jump into it, huh?
Let's do it.
So why don't you briefly introduce what you recommended to me last week or last 2 weeks?
Yeah, so for a big 10-0, we are
episode 100, everybody.
Yeah, every segment we're gonna multiply by 10. So for this episode, just to set it up a little bit, so Louis mentioned it, but we are going to talk our thoughts on the last recommendation from the last episode. But at the end of this episode, we will be taking a look through the live chat and asking for your input. Louis and I will then take what you recommend, and we will be talking about that for the next episode, episode 11, which kicks off season 2 of the podcast. We didn't mention that until now, but this will be season 2. All your favorite characters will return, but there may be a big cliffhanger at the end of this episode. Who knows? Okay, so getting into it, I recommended to you Frog Fractions, which was a game developed by, I believe at the time, a studio made up of one person back in 2012, and it was a browser-only game, and it is a simple game about learning math, and that's all it is.
Yeah, and I gotta say, I learned quite a lot about math.
Yeah, did you?
Yeah, I actually, I'm naming my new EP Math because I learned math from Frog Fractions.
That's good.
Yeah, okay, so I've played games like this before, you know, these sort of mindfuck games where the joke is kind of just the absurdity, you know, it's just an absurdist comedy, essentially. You could also call it a satire, although that's kind of loose, because it's satirizing multiple different genres, but like it doesn't really have a central focus. It just kind of hops around. See what I did there? Hop like damn.
Because it's fractions. I got it.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, this so I guess we should mention that, surprise, the game isn't just about learning fractions.
Oh shit, wait, I need to put up the spoilers. Okay, spoilers.
Oh no. Oh, spoilers.
Spoilers are up now, so say whatever you want.
So this is something that I felt like while I was recommending this, I was thinking about, actually the whole time I was playing Doki Doki Literature, Club, I was thinking about this game because this game is not necessarily the same thing, but it is very similar in that it is it definitely it's a satire, and it changes what it is as you are progressing through the experience. So with this game, although it does begin as your very standard like classic PC educational game, it then goes completely off the rails and just continues to change what it is as you go through.
Yeah, although I just wanted to say that the sort of the what word am I looking for? I guess we'll call it the overlay. I'm sure there's a better word. The fake out, I guess, of the main game being like a fraction teaching tool isn't even like it's not even a fraction teaching tool. Like, you just eat bugs and then a fraction appears, and it doesn't really, like, it doesn't actually have anything to do with, even the actual central fake game has nothing to do with fractions beyond the fact that there are fractions on the screen. So
But it is, I mean, I don't know how much you've played edutainment games before, but that is not necessarily something that's uncommon in the genre, where it's just like you're playing this game.
But come on, this was like especially not educational. Like, you don't even have time to make out why the fractions are fractions. Well, I did find that funny, although I will say that if it wanted to trick me, it did a really bad job, because I think as soon as I started playing this, I was like, yeah, this isn't about fractions. I mean, I kind of knew that going in, but like, even if I didn't, I feel like I would have kind of figured that out pretty fast. Which I guess is a minor complaint. Yeah, so there are plenty of entertaining things throughout this game to kind of start with the positives I have. I mean, for one thing, in the base game where you're like eating bugs is so just mind-numbingly boring, but I think that's the point. And like, every time you beat a stage, which by the way, there is very little difficulty involved. When you beat a stage, you get the upgrade screen, and like, as you upgrade I think it's your lock-on site. Every time you upgrade lock-on site, a new upgrade appears to de-upgrade lock-on site, and then after you choose that upgrade, a new upgrade appears to get lock-on site again. And like, the titles of those upgrades start having a conversation with each other. So I found that was pretty funny early on in the game, but eventually, you end up, I did it completely by accident, but you have to like get a ridiculous amount of fruit to get one upgrade that moves you on through the game. And to do that, you basically go down and you go under the water, which it didn't look like you could do. And then you just gather a bunch of fruit. And from then on out, the game kind of just goes nuts and just does whatever it wants. I played this game 2 weeks ago, so I don't remember the exact order of everything. I kind of just remember the scenes themselves. But
yeah, should we try to talk about the structure? So you start with what you mentioned, which is like you're just like a frog on a lily pad. You're eating bugs. Then I think at one point it becomes almost a bullet hell sort of game, right? Where you get a dragon and you have to dodge all these bullets on the screen.
Mm-hmm. And it's the dragon that allows you to go under the water.
Yeah, and that happens for a little bit, and then it becomes a text adventure at one point, right? And
that wasn't next.
You learn about the history of boxing.
Yeah. Okay. So so you go underwater. I don't remember exactly the order again, but you do. Yeah. You like go to a bug planet where you are put on trial, by a bug, by an insect, and you become one of their people, I guess. And then you continue the game on their planet, only you go underwater again, and now it's like this maze. It almost reminds me of Echo the Dolphin if every screen was static. You're not that fast, but that's just what it reminded me of anyway. And as you're going through this like cavern underwater, yeah, you're getting told the history of boxing, but I'm pretty certain it's not the real history of boxing, and if it is, I learned a lot. But I'm
it's an entertainment game.
Pretty certain that it is not but see, this is where
you learn something.
I thought the game started to kind of fall apart. So, I didn't find the boxing thing funny. This seemed very like I don't know. It seemed very 9gaggy to me. I think. So I think the problem. So a game like this, where the comedy comes purely from the absurdity, it's still important what you do with that absurdity, and purely being random isn't funny. It's actually just kind of cringeworthy. I didn't think this game was cringeworthy necessarily, but you know what I mean, right? Like, there's a point where you feel like you're just being LOL so random, lowercase x, uppercase d, right? Like, and I feel like this game crossed into that territory multiple times, where I was just like, okay, I get it, but like the history of boxing, I'm like, okay, that's just I didn't find that particularly funny. It's hard to talk about this game critically because this is so like the just by nature of this game, it's so inherently subjective because it's basically just a comedy. You're playing it to laugh, and if you don't find it funny, I feel like that's going to be enough to ruin it because the game itself is intentionally terrible. Like, it's a terrible game.
Right.
But that's the point. So so it has to be funny, and I guess the humor was very hit or miss for me. I don't know.
Yeah, don't you? So, from what I remember, like the game sort of ends, but then you come back and you like run for president or something.
Do you run for president? I don't remember if you run for I think you might. God, man, I wish I had refreshed my memory on this. Oh, yes, you do. That's right. You run for president, and then you produce pornography. You produce bulk pornography. And that's like after the text adventure sequence. The text adventure sequence, I will just say, was total crap. It wasn't funny. It was completely. It was just whatever. I get it, but like, it wasn't ridiculous enough, Like,
Yeah, and I felt like that was the one section. So in general, like this game does not take a long time to get all the way through.
No.
And that was the one part of the experience that I felt just lasted a little too long.
Yeah.
And maybe it's because I couldn't figure it out right away. So maybe it's like my fault as a player, but even still, I felt like that was probably the weakest portion. I understand that like they were trying to, they took the edutainment genre, flipped it on its head, and were just like throwing everything at the wall. But that was the part where I was like, yeah, this is like, let's get back to just like a whole bunch of different things happening sequentially, right?
Yeah. So and I mean, I played it with a walkthrough, and I agree with you that it took too long. And it's not even that long necessarily, but it's going to take every player a while to figure it out. It's a text adventure, and you have to be somewhat specific at least, because that's just the nature of the genre. And it just kept going, and nothing really that funny happened. So that was a big problem, I felt like. But yeah, the bug pornography section, that was pretty funny. I will not lie, that was pretty funny. You sit there and you go through multiple times, just it completely overinflating the amount of money that you put into the porn industry. And yeah, I don't know. I let me real quick, just so that I can remember if we're forgetting any section. I'm gonna look up the walkthrough that I had so I can kind of see, because I don't want to. All right, here we are. Yeah. So I think we got everything. I think that was all the sections of the game. Oh yeah, that's right. I remember there was a bullet hell boss battle in space where you're going through an asteroid belt and you're shooting bugs, and then you reach the boss, which is like a fucking robot on Mars or something that you have to eat its legs. Yeah. Yeah, we got everything, by the way. That was pretty much it. There was the text adventure. Oh, Dance Dance Revolution. That's right. You played Dance Dance Revolution at one point.
Yeah.
It's funnier right now reading this than it was playing it. I think that's kind of the problem, is I wasn't laughing that much. I get it, I got it was jumping around genres and like it was doing some silly things, but again, it was just too hit or miss, I think, for me, and as a commentary on education games, it's really not saying much. It's just subverting it as a comedic tool, which is funny, but not altogether clever, I felt.
Yeah, I think for me, it's probably a time and place thing, but I found it to be pretty hilarious. Just like, and I guess I don't know. It's coming from a place of having played edutainment games that there's certain beats, but yeah, I definitely agree that it's like once you get past the initial, okay, you're eating bugs, and then now you're upgrading and things are going crazy. Then it's like this is not like it just used an edutainment game as a very basic base for what you end up doing, which is funny within itself. But at the end of the day, it's like, okay, this isn't necessarily a critique on edutainment games.
Yeah. Which again, like I said, all that's easy to overlook if you find this funny. Like I said, it's a comedy. It's like, think of it like Monty Python, right? Monty Python by most metrics is just made horrifically, but that's why it's funny. Monty Python and the Holy Grail. I'm sorry, Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Yeah. You know, like it's a horribly made film, and that is the joke. And if you don't find that joke funny, you'll probably just think it's a horribly made film.
Right.
And I mean, where that movie is consistently hilarious, this game just, you know, it was chuckle-worthy here or there, but I didn't find it to be much more than that, personally. I don't know how much else I have to say about this. We need to vamp! We need to vamp for time!
Oh no! Hurry! Think about different things.
Yeah, I don't know. Is there anything else you want to say?
This is all the good content that you get in our 10th episode, where we think about things to say.
Talking about vamping, vamping by saying that we should vamp.
That's a commentary, folks. That's what commentary looks like.
Yeah. So, I mean, is there anything else you want to say in it? Because
so I think so for me, I think you can't talk about this game without talking about the sequel. So, not to spoil the sequel, although I don't know how I can't, but I want to talk about what this spawned. So
should I put the spoiler tag down?
You probably keep it up just in case.
Okay.
So right after this game, the team this became kind of a little cult sensation. Right around 2012, the team then announced that they would be making a sequel. They went to Kickstarter, and they officially announced the sequel. But they mentioned that the game would not be, and there was no information on the Kickstarter. It was just Frog Fractions 2, and that was the whole Kickstarter. No one knew what Frog Fractions 2 was. They wouldn't say when or what, like if it would be released. The video was just like this random garbage, and then they announced that there would be an ARG, an alternative reality game that people would have to play to actually unlock Frog Fractions 2. And that was like the whole thing. So Frog Fractions 2 became more this like this thing in the consciousness of gamers of like, what is Frog Fractions 2? Where is Frog Fractions 2? How do we get Frog Fractions 2? And so this game actually influence a lot of indie developers, and so Twinbeard Studios, the creators of this, then reached out to a lot of indie teams and would like hide little bits and pieces of what Frog Fractions 2 were in their games.
Yeah.
So I won't give away what Frog Fractions 2 is, but if you were to search for Frog Fractions 2 as a game, you will not find it, is all I'll say.
Right. Okay.
And that became very much like a whole thing that definitely this game spawned. And I mean, you can feel that within this game. I think that a large portion of this game is that like you definitely want to go into this without having it spoiled for you. I think that's the majority of the fun. If you knew what this was, I don't think it would be as exciting, right? I mean, this thing subverts your expectations of what an edutainment game is or what something called Frog Fractions might be, and I think that's very much the point. So I think you do have to go into this raw. And I think that then trickled into the whole creation of Frog Fractions 2, not just as itself as a game, but then everything surrounding Frog Fractions 2 release and everything. I think the ARG spanned both games and like actual real life places like most ARGs do, as well as like social media stuff and everything.
Wow.
And that very much became like what this, I think, even game is now known for, is spawning off onto that. So I haven't actually played Frog Fractions 2 yet, so I don't even know what it is, but it became such a thing where it's like pretty much every E3, people would ask developers, "Is this Frog Fractions 2?"
That's awesome. So basically,
Which was pretty funny.
Frog Fractions, in a way, would you say increase the popularity of ARGs? Because obviously ARGs had been around for a long time.
Oh yeah, I would say Frog Fractions 2 became one of the biggest ARGs.
Right.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
Definitely.
that's cool. I mean, I saw a little bit about it. I did see that it was like hidden in other games and stuff. I saw that and I thought that was kind of neat. You know, I mean, look, if the game was influential, the game was influential. You know, I'm not gonna knock it. You know, I'll give it that. But I don't. Is there anything else that we can say? Because I don't think we should stretch it out needlessly.
Yeah, I think that kind of wraps up Frog Fractions.
Okay, so I will finish. I'll give my closing thoughts. You know, again, it's if you find this funny, you'll like it. If you don't, you won't. It's that simple. And would I recommend this? I'd say yeah. You know, it's really short, and again, I think there's definitely a chance you'll find it hilarious. But there's also a chance you won't. I just didn't care for it. I didn't think it was bad. I thought that for what it was, it had some interesting ideas, some good ideas, and some funny moments. Overall, I'd give it like a 5 out of 10, I guess. But again, that's just because I found it to be comedically hit or miss. And that's your personal opinion on it is going to completely rely on that. So
I don't think, as we talked about this, I was as enthusiastic about this thing as I am, because this usually makes its way onto my top games list, actually.
Oh, gee.
And I think for me, it was much more a time and place thing than anything else. Like I haven't gone back to this in a long time, and I'm pretty sure if I did, like I would not be as high on it as I am. But I think what this has spawned from it itself was fun and funny at the time. Like this was something that really was not very common in 2012. This is not necessarily something that you saw pretty much at all. But coming out of this has definitely influenced a lot of risks taken within the industry. And I think this specifically was something that was just so different at the time. But like you can see its influence in things like Undertale, Doki Doki, definitely. There are a lot of things that I feel like this has carried into and bled into. But so I mean, I wouldn't even score it favorably. Like I would agree with your 5 out of 10. I think that for sure it has its flaws. It's short, but I think that just what it did, and like I mentioned, I really feel like for me it's a time and place thing as to why I love this thing so much for what it is.
Yeah, you know what? I guess I think that's perfectly fair, but I will say that I know that this is. I mean, I obviously didn't say that this was the first of its kind, but I know that it's not the first of its kind because before this came out, I played a fucking Newgrounds Flash game, 2 Newgrounds Flash games, the game, and then like another the game or something. It was like the game, and then there was another one. Hopefully you guys remember the name of the other one. Those things were fucking hilarious. The entire game was you were on a tiny platform, and you walked off and killed yourself endlessly. And every time that happened, you would get a new screen, and as the game would go on, some random different kinds of gameplay would occur that all ended in you killing yourself. But it was like, and it parodied tons of different games, and that came out before this did, and that did basically the same thing. I mean, it wasn't faking you. I mean, it was kind of faking you out, but it wasn't making you believe that you were in for like a real game, you know? Like from the beginning, you could tell this is a joke. But it did the same thing, and I wonder if, because the game was pretty popular, I wonder if the game influenced Frog Fractions.
Most likely.
Yeah, because if that's the case, then the game is the OG. Is the true innovator to Undertale and Doki Doki Literature Club.
Yeah.
Which is pretty fucking hilarious, actually. That I do recommend to everybody. I wouldn't recommend it to Steven, it's whatever, but absolutely go fucking play those. Okay. So moving on, I think.
Yeah.
All right, so I'll briefly introduce what I recommended to Steven. I recommended to Steven an album by Pink Floyd, A Momentary Lapse of Reason. This album came out in 1987, as you can see. and it was very much so. By the point that this album came out, the band was a trio. I mean, there are plenty of session musicians, but it was David Gilmour, Nick Mason, and Richard Wright. And Gilmour took over the band because Roger Waters left after the final cut. And well, I think that's all I'll say for the intro. I want to hear what you thought of this, having no understanding of anything about this album beyond what I told you. Basically, I'm assuming.
Okay, this is going to be contentious, but I want to get this out of the way before we talk about this.
Sure.
I like Pink Floyd. I don't love Pink Floyd.
Okay.
So I definitely appreciate what they did for the music industry, and I appreciate their sound and everything. But I mean, like, for me, it's not something that, and they were revolutionary at the time, but it's not something where I'm like, oh man, like, you know, that I hold necessarily those Roger Waters days on some sort, like, higher than anything else. Does that make sense? So I just want to set that expectation before we start talking about this one, which is kind of like the post Waters days, because I do really like, for instance, The Wall and some of those, a lot of the albums that Pink Floyd put out, but they're not necessarily my favorite or anything.
Yeah.
So at this one, I'll say that what I will say about this, where I want to start talking about this one, is at times, in fact, most of the time, I felt like this album was it felt like a cover band, and it felt like an emulation or an imitation of what Pink Floyd is.
Mm-hmm.
Right? A lot of the tracks on here, I felt like they were like, okay, what are all of the elements of what make us great? Okay, let's make sure we have all of those elements in there. But it didn't feel like this is what made us great. I felt that a couple times throughout this album. Not to necessarily say that's like a bad thing. Like, I still think that I don't think that they never really necessarily ever hit that high, but I also don't think it's like, oh man, this is total shit. Like, they don't even understand like what that Waters era was. And there are some, I want to say, like, the things that I think that so there are some tracks on here that I like. There are 2 tracks on here that I like. On the Turning Away and Learning to Fly, which Learning to Fly I think is probably the most popular one that would have come out of this album.
Yeah.
Because I know I've heard that one before.
Yeah.
And I do like On the Turning Away. But then a lot of the other tracks on here, like, even to the point where I think where I felt it the most are there some interstitial tracks where it's just instrumentals that felt very Pink Floyd to me. And the point where I was like, okay, this just really feels like they're just like taking all the elements that made Pink Floyd and like kind of trying to stitch them together, was I think on one of the tracks they sample a line or 2 from Casablanca.
I think that I don't know which one that would have been. Maybe On the Turning Away. I have no fucking clue.
I think it's Casablanca.
Could be yet another.
It's definitely
movie.
It's definitely Humphrey Bogart.
Yeah, I don't know.
And I was like, man, that was like, oh, okay. They listened to The Wall and they were like, oh, that's right. We had like some people talking and stuff in there. They're like, okay, we got to find some good people.
Well, also
talking.
the casino, casino sound effects on the beginning of, I believe, One Slip. There's like the casino goes off, the slot machine goes off, and it's like they're trying to do time again, basically.
They're trying to do time, yep, or money, yeah, exactly. And so there were a couple instances where I was like, man, they're just like, it really feels to me like this is an emulation of Pink Floyd, but this is not Pink Floyd necessarily. Yeah. And then before I pass it back to you to get your thoughts, I think the last thing I would say is like my general feeling about this album is it's like, okay, yeah, like I think it flows well, and there's a lot of stuff that they were clearly trying to do in that as well, like flowing between tracks in the album, and I think that's That's good. I continue to have that issue because I listen to it on streaming where it's like the track cuts and then another track starts, and it really makes it very jarring, actually.
Yeah.
And like I mentioned, I think there are a couple good tracks here, but on the most part, some of the like instrumental only tracks and as we just talked about, some of the like emulation of sound, I really wasn't too high on.
Right. So first I want to say why I recommended this to you, because it's a weird recommendation. If you're going to recommend Pink Floyd, why the fuck would you recommend A Momentary Lapse of Reason? Well, this is widely considered their worst record. Of course, there are some differing opinions on that. The album that came out in 2014, it was sort of like a comeback, but it was basically just a bunch of leftovers from the 1994 album. Some people hate that one. I think that one's okay. But this one, I think this one will always be the central sort of hated Pink Floyd album. And I think that's fascinating because we're talking about a band that has very much reached legendary status. Pink Floyd is their name is up there in the ranks with the Beatles, where you don't have to know the music to know the band name or to know the cover art of Dark Side of the Moon, they've reached a place where they seem like these towering giants, legends of rock that could do no wrong. Well, that's just false, because this album exists. And for that matter, even the Division Bell after this is not that much better, although it is better. So I just think it's interesting to listen to the worst record by a band like Pink Floyd. If the Beatles had a bad record, which I don't think that they do, but if they did, that would be interesting too. It's sort of the same thing. But you're absolutely right that they sound like almost like an imitation of Pink Floyd, and that's very much because Gilmour was brought on in the second album to replace Syd Barrett. If you know the story about Syd Barrett, and he was never a creative force behind Pink Floyd. I mean, you may have thought that he was, but once you get to this album, you realize that he was not. For as great as his guitar work is and how many, solos throughout their career that are just among the greatest guitar solos ever, and how many of them are fantastic and just incredible guitar solos, he's a great player, but he is not a great songwriter. Making the guitar fucking cry and wail and sound incredible does not translate to making good songs. And I guess Gilmour thought that it did, because Pink Floyd could have just broken up after the final cut. And for the record, I don't think the final cut is good either. But they didn't, and he had to reform the band to create this. So I think on this album, for one thing that Pink Floyd, I think, deserves the most credit for in their 70s era is the production of their albums. Dark Side of the Moon and Wish You Were Here and The Wall sound better than most music that comes out today. The production has not aged a second. It sounds incredible, it sounds spacious, and it's a high standard, a high watermark for music production. Compare that to this. I mean, this album is mixed well, but it sounds like it was shat out of a synthesizer. It sounds so dated. And in particular points of this album sound like fucking 80s sitcom music.
That is the one thing I would mention as well. This album feels very, well, not every track, but a lot of the tracks feel very 80s.
Yeah, the verses in Learning to Fly, for example, holy shit. They sound like crap. And I guess, but they pull out all the Pink Floyd stops. They've got the female background singers. They've got the sound effects, as you mentioned. They've got the anti-war song, which is just awful. The Dogs of War is the worst song here, if you don't count those really fucking shitty A New Machine tracks, which are god-awful. If you don't count those, The Dogs of War is appallingly bad, where you've got these strings that sound like synths. If they're not synths, they sound like synths. If they are synths, they sound horrendous. And David Gilmour just belting out his voice to try to sound like Roger Waters, because Roger Waters always wrote anti-war songs, except this anti-war song is hilarious and it cracks me up. And every time David Gilmour starts singing in this song, I die laughing. So I'll give it that. But it's fucking terrible. And, you know, some other stuff here isn't quite that bad, but what I want to say, what I did before I listened to this album, it's not something that I recommended you to do, and maybe it would have been good to recommend you to do this, but we didn't have a theme, so I thought it was kind of weird. Before I re-listened to this album for this stream, I went and listened to Pink Floyd's three like masterpieces, I would say. And they have other classic records, but Dark Side of the Moon, Wish You Were Here, and Animals. Those 3 albums. Those albums were released in a row. I mean, well, every 2 years. And they are absolutely, I mean, they're incredible. Dark Side of the Moon, of course. Wish You Were Here, you know, sounds even better. The production on that is even better at points. I don't think it's as good of a record. And then Animals, which I think is their best album. Production on that one is harsher, it's stiffer, it's drier, but it fits the tone, and it's got this biting political commentary. It's a very political album. And then you hear David Gilmour try to get political. You know, what Roger Waters did on Animals. David Gilmour, he tries, and On the Wall as well. David Gilmour tries to do that sometimes, but it's just laughable. Again, the Dogs of War. Oh my God. And I mean, and when they do ballads like On the Turning Away, it's just sappy and gross. And like On the Turning Away ends in a very, very good guitar solo, very good progression to that guitar solo. But by that point, I feel like it's unearned. The ballad was just sappy and fucking sluggish, and it just sucked. And that's kind of the whole album. Like even a track like Sorrow, which I think has good moments. I think Sorrow has some points where the guitar feels genuinely spacious. You know, it feels like it's filling up the space around you. It sounds very good. But again, that song's groove just kind of sucks. And it just repeats endlessly for 8 minutes. And it doesn't really feel like it was worthy of doing that. Unlike a song on Animals, which can repeat the same groove for nearly 20. And it never once gets tiresome. So... man, I have a lot to say, but I'll get back to you and let you kind of touch on what I said, I guess.
Yeah, I would agree. I think it feels oddly slow.
Yeah.
Not in a good way either.
I mean, they always, their music was slow. I mean,
and their music is slow. So it's not like it's not like that's something that's like distinct to this one, but it just feels a little slower.
Yeah.
Like not in a good way.
Yeah.
And I would agree with those 2 New Machines. Even Signs of Life, like the way this album starts, it's just like a downer. Like I was like, oh man.
Well, it goes on for 4 minutes, and like sure, David Gilmour's guitar work's nice, but does Learning to Fly really justify this fucking super understated intro? Like, right. No, it doesn't.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, fucking, again, I compare this to Wish You Were Here. Wish You Were Here, the opening to Shine On You Crazy Diamond, the beginning of that track, is just synths for like 3 or 4, maybe even 5 minutes before anything actually happens, and it's beautiful. And when the song finally does get into the lyrical portion, it makes the whole thing worth it. But here, when Learning to Fly starts, it just sounds like crap. Like, I don't even hate that song for the record. I think the hook is pretty good, but the verses sound horrendous, so it's kind of a bad mix, a mixed bag, I guess. But, like, again, it doesn't justify Signs of Life.
Yeah, for sure. So I listened to it a couple times. I think the one thing that I'll say is it's like, okay, we're on our 10th episode. Thinking back to the bad albums I listened to in these last 10 episodes, this is still like leaps and bounds above
Revival.
Most of those. So that's so.
Well, what are you comparing this to? Like, what do you mean? Like,
well, so let's think about Eminem.
Revival. Yes, this is better than Revival. I agree.
Yeah,
it is.
Yeah. So let's just let everyone know that everyone, the verdict is in. A Momentary Lapse of Reason is better than Eminem's Revival. Put that down in the history. That's a review they could put on their back of the box.
Yeah. When
they remaster A Momentary Lapse of Reason.
Which they do every fucking 2 years, basically. I mean,
Right.
hey guys, for the 2018 remaster vinyl on the back, Stephen Falgout, better than Eminem's Revival. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's definitely structured, you know. I mean, Pink Floyd was always good about this. And
Oh, that's a rave review.
Yeah.
There you go. That's Lewis's. It's definitely structured.
Well, but I mean, it is, right? I mean, like, you know, it's structured
Yeah,
like a Pink
for
Floyd
sure.
album. It has a flow that's acceptable. You know?
Yeah, for sure.
And that's important. Even if the music contained therein kind of sounds like 80s sitcom music and cheesy fucking, I swear, some of the sax playing, and not the actual quality of the sax playing, but the sax solos like over the music in the background sounds like fucking Kenny G, like on Terminal Frost. Oh my god, like parts of that song are great. I mean, parts of that track are great, and then there parts of it sound like Kenny G. So I don't know. Do you agree with that? Like, do you get that vibe? Doesn't it kind of sound like shitty, corny lounge music at points?
Yeah, some of it definitely did.
Yeah.
And I think you called it out, especially Terminal Frost. And the thing is, Terminal Frost is between those two new machines, so that whole honestly, that whole like back half or like last quarter of this album was just like ugh.
I thought okay, but I will say I actually think Terminal Frost and Sorrow are better than like the opening duo and the closing duo, not counting A New Machine, is the best parts of the album for me. And they're not good. It's just mediocre, but it's better than being fucking the Dogs of War. I mean, hell. Again, Sorrow, it's just what, but you're right, it is just kind of you know? It's like, like Terminal Frost has a progression, but does it sound good? Like, rarely. Sorrow has no progression, and occasionally it sounds good, but it doesn't really justify it. David Gilmour just singing in these like 2 or 3 notes the whole way through, and it's just like, what is there to this? Yeah. One thing I will say, let's see. I guess it just, again, what about the production? Do you agree with me on that? Doesn't it kind of, it just feels really rooted in the 80s, doesn't it? It sounds like the album was created with a synthesizer.
Yeah, hold on. Before we get there, I want to phone the audience. It is our 10th episode. And just call out some of the things that we're seeing from the chat. Meme Thief says that Pink Floyd sucks and that we need to listen to Nickelback instead. And I think that everyone could take note of that, because it's definitely true. It's like, okay, yeah, this is better than Eminem's Revival, but is it better than Nickelback? I can't say it is. I just can't. Who could?
True, definitely.
Yeah, I think that I would definitely agree. There, like I mentioned, I think that a lot of this album feels like it comes out of the 80s. Not all of this album, but a lot of this album feels like it comes out of the 80s. And I'm actually surprised to see 87, because the other thing I felt was like that a lot of that sax in the background feels very like getting into that early 90s time frame.
Yeah.
Of music as well. And I think that those two coming to a head on some of these tracks just feel so
gross.
Gross, yeah. Robotic. I don't know. It's like it's almost like it's overproductionalized here, where it's like, man, sure. It's too synthetic. You know, it's like, oh, this is too clean, where it feels like very much a sign of its time, versus like what you mentioned with some of the other Pink Floyd albums where they've built that production around something. Whereas like this is like, oh, we need to do a little bit of what's hot right now.
Yeah. Gated reverb on the drums especially. That really bothers me. I mean, that was a big thing in the 80s, and it's a sound that has aged horrifically. The drums don't sound huge anymore. They sound fake now. You know, maybe in the 80s it made them sound massive, but certainly not anymore. And this album has that. And I mean, Pink Floyd, like, does Dark Side of the Moon sound like it's rooted in the 70s? No. It's timeless because of its sound. And same thing with Wish You Were Here, although Wish You Were Here has more synths, so maybe it sounds a little more 70s, but still. You know, and Animals, I mean, well, Animals is rooted in its time, but that's important because it's political. It's, you know, it's rooted in Thatcherism. It kind of has to be. But again, it doesn't sound like an album that You don't hear it and think, wow, this is a 70s album. But this you hear and you're like, well, 80s. And that's a real problem, especially for Pink Floyd. You know, none of, even the album after this doesn't sound like it's rooted in 1994. This is the only one where it's like, yeah, this is very much of its time. I mean,
yeah, for sure.
And that even their psychedelic rock records of the 60s don't, they at least they've held up better than this, which man, I just, yeah, so Animals by Pink Floyd isn't nearly, Meme Thief says, Animals by Pink Floyd isn't nearly as good as Animals by the geniuses in Maroon 5. I agree. You're right.
Yeah, Paris also asks, when are we making our top 10 best albums list and where will Nickelback appear? Well, do Nickelback have 10 albums? Because they would all make the list, let me tell you.
It's kind of a redundant question.
And so I'm just going to say, just peeling back the onion a little bit here, I then searched just to really get the joke good, make it the best joke it can be for our 10th episode. I then searched Nickelback on Wikipedia to see if they have 10 albums. I don't want to talk about that, though. I want to talk about, on the Nickelback Wikipedia page, someone took the time to, under band members, make a timeline Gantt chart of every member of the band and how long they were in Nickelback. And I just want to say, if you're out there listening,
Godspeed.
Thank you.
Yeah, Godspeed.
Thank you. You're doing the Lord's work, let me tell you.
Yeah, you know, it's okay. Hey, there's a bad sign. We have a Pink Floyd record up, and we're compelled to talk about Nickelback. I think that says all you need to know.
That's all you need to know. So I want to go ahead and wrap up on this one.
Definitely.
I think that, you know, it was listenable. I wouldn't listen to it again. I think everything that we mentioned definitely holds true. There are a couple tracks on here that I did like, but for the most part, I just thought it was kind of a slog to get through. It wasn't entirely enjoyable. I think that I would, I don't think I would recommend this. I don't think that there's any reason to listen to this album all the way through. I'd probably give it about somewhere around a 6. Like I mentioned, listenable. It's not great, and I wouldn't take the time to seek it out.
Yeah. So this is a pile of shit. Gilmore should be ashamed. 4. I'd give it a 4 out of 10. It's you know, and again, it really hurt to listen to this after listening to their trio of masterpieces. You know, imagine listening to Dark Side of the Moon, Wish You Were Here, Animals, and then putting on a Momentary Lapse of Reason. It's like you can tell. And the final thing I want to say is that at least they were self-aware with the album title. Okay, so on that note, I think we are going to... That was a very unoriginal joke, but anyway,
But it was right there for you, and you took it.
Here we are with the recommendation. So, I mean, at this point, guys, just fucking spill out all the recs you have. It doesn't matter. It can be a joke. It can be a not joke. Just spill out everything you got, and we're just going to watch for it and kind of pick them out. Steven, do you want to kind of explain how we're kind of thinking we're going to end up making this work?
Yeah, I don't know if we've 100% decided yet, but I think that we are trying to... we're trying to do this in such a way that, first of all, I think we're both going to pick a different rec. And potentially in the next episode, I think that a portion of that will actually be talking about what the recommendation was and kind of explaining what we saw or what we watched to each other, because I'm not sure that we would necessarily take the time each to look at both as we typically do. Hopefully we'll pick something that maybe the other person hasn't seen or listened to or anything, so maybe make it a little more interesting, because then you'll get our complete opinion on something. But I guess we'll see how these play out.
Yeah. So I want to scroll up and see if we missed any at the beginning, and I'll read those out.
A lot of Nickelback, which is definitely fun. Boy Meets World was recommended. Yeah. I do like that.
Yeah, Boy Meets World was recommended. And also the cinematic masterpiece, Too Much Anal, number 2.
You know, I thought that they couldn't get any better after number 1, but...
That was all for that, and then we're going towards the end here, and this is where we're getting
I see Imagine Dragons.
Imagine Dragons from Master Spiny. We've got Meme Thief is really, really, really trying to get Happy Pills. That's an album that I made 3 years
Self-Contained
ago.
Thinker versus the World, Season 1. Oh, I want to talk about that real quick. Lewis, do you know you're on IMDb?
Yes, I do.
Because I saw you on IMDb. Yeah. I don't know how.
Yeah, because I'm from Self-Contained Thinker versus the World, Season 1, the pre-movie era.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're listed as such on IMDb.
That's Jeremy's YouTube show, which he has been doing his damnedest to get you to watch from the start of this. I feel like it would be kind of cheap to choose it though, because I know him. Happy Pills or Destitution app. Yeah. So yeah, Happy Pills, that's kind of a meme. Meme Thief is making it a meme, at least. It's an album I made 3 years ago. It's god awful. And he wants me to remaster it. So Amazing World of Gumball, the first 10 episodes. The self-titled first and the self-titled album from Embrace, I guess it's their only album is what you're implying with that. Keep them coming, guys. I mean, once they stop, we'll have to kind of pick. But do you see anything that's sticking out to you for you to select here? Jeremy really wants you to watch Self-Contained Thinker versus the World. Gumball, and then Meme Thief really wants you to listen to Happy Pills. I don't. First 10 episodes of Full Metal Alchemist.
Okay. It's interesting.
I know him, so I won't pick that. Yeah, Casey, Steven can pick your rec, but I'm not going to pick your rec because I know you, so I feel like that's cheating. I want to give other people a shot. But yeah, Steven, and anybody in here you can pick.
I do like, I want to see more self-promotion.
Yeah,
I do like the couple self-promotion that we have in here. That's good brand management.
Well, hell, if you do Self-Contained Thinker versus the World, I actually will be able to talk about it with you. Sergeant Pinky's Lonely Hooves Club Band or Happy Pills. I thought you just said Destitution Avenue or Happy Pills. Don't listen to the Beetle Bronies. That is not worth it.
Soulja Boy Tell 'Em.
Soulja Boy Tell 'Em album. Zadrin's communist videos. There you go. There's self-promotion. You can watch some communist propaganda. Watch my review of the Beetle Bronies.
Okay. Okay. I like that a lot.
So you're doing Self-Contained Thinker versus the World.
I am going to, just for you, I am going to watch your review of something that I've never seen, and I am going to talk about it.
Are you actually doing that? Are you gonna fucking do Self-Contained Thinker versus?
I am actually doing that, and I'll mix in. I will do that first, and then I will watch a little bit of whatever this Beetle Bronies thing is.
It's not a thing to watch. It's some music.
Okay, I'll listen to it with my eyes.
Oh, hold on one second. You just keep vamping here.
Are you on a phone call? Are you? Hey everyone, this is the segment where I am gonna talk for just for time. Have you ever thought about the way that comments come into a live stream? Like, what's up with that? Like, we would think that there would be some better source for commenting on a video. Okay, you're back.
Yeah. It sounded like you had some good stuff. Watch the Nut Shack all seasons. Yeah, I'll just do that again. No. So wait, so Jeremy, be very specific. So Steven accepted your rec. So what is your rec specifically? So he knows. So Jeremy, post that. And then I need to find someone from somebody I don't know. I've already heard the Beetle Bronies album. I've already heard my own album. So I can't do that. I mean, Paris, I might do Embrace. I might. But keep them coming, guys, if you got some other ones. Okay, so Steven, that might not make sense to you. So the Beetle Brony saga, That was Jeremy's. It's 3 episodes in Self-Contained Thinker versus the World.
Okay.
So it's a playlist on his channel, actually. So I can give you the link directly to that. But yeah, I am in one of those videos.
Okay, that'll make it better.
Yeah.
I can talk about how bad you are.
Yeah, exactly. Nickelback, Feed the Machine. I've already listened to 2 Nickelback albums. I'm not doing that again. So far, I'm, Spiny, recommend things. Spiny, that's what's going on.
Yes, just to reiterate, for our 10th episode, our really, this is our peak. It's only downhill from here. We are asking that you provide some recommendations, and then Lewis and I will talk about one of those recommendations.
Yeah, but
that
Steven's already taken.
I have picked mine, but Lewis is still up for grabs.
Yeah. So far, I'm leaning very much towards Embrace. Let's see. Because some of these other recs I already know. Soulja Boy, Tell Him. That could be kind of fun, too. I don't deny that. Happy Pills. Happy motherfucking pills. Happy Pills, you doo-doo face. Holywood by Marilyn Manson. Limp Biscuit, Chocolate Starfish, and the hot dog flavored water. Oh, man. I'm really thinking Limp Biscuit right now. I'm really thinking Limp Bizkit. Meme Thief, that's good. That's really good. I have not heard a Limp Bizkit album. Casey, Jeremy, do you agree with Casey? Should Steven do that? Because Casey, it's his rec. Because the Beetle Brony saga is fairly short, I think. I think it's like 30 minutes? No, one of them is 30 minutes. That's right. Well, I know you're not forcing him to, but Jeremy's gonna have to. Okay, so Steven, do you see that? So there's an additional,
I see that.
Optional. I don't really know if that's that relevant because, it gives Jeremy more views, but I don't know if it's really that relevant. And if Casey, it is a sequel, but what if Steven's planning to watch these videos and then listen to the albums, what's he gonna do for that? Go watch all of fucking go watch the entirety of MLP? That's not gonna happen. So yeah, just stick to the 3 videos. I'll send them to you. Okay, so guys, I think we're lowing up on time here. So if nobody gets me a better fucking rec than Limp Bizkit, hot dog, and the chocolate starfish and the hot dog flavored water, then I'm going with that. You got 1 minute.
This is your opportunity. I was kidding everyone. When I said we're only downhill from here, I actually meant we're only uphill from here. And you got to get it in before we get too big.
Yes. You got
Pretty soon.
You got a minute.
Pretty soon, the paparazzi will come. We won't be able to look at comments anymore. They'll shield them from our eyes because our eyes will be shielded with gold. Just pure gold.
Yeah. All right, guys, you got like fucking 20 seconds. I know there's a bit of a delay, so I'll give you a tiny bit of extra time. I gotta say, if this is gonna make me listen to Limp Bizkit's chocolate starfish and the hot dog flavored water, then I am perfectly happy with that. And it makes Steven watch Jeremy's YouTube channel.
It's all led to this. This is the moment.
Yeah, like you said, this is really our peak, Yeah, I think we're done. I think that is it. All right, everybody. So next episode, Steven will be watching the Beetle Bronies trilogy, or the Beetle Bronies saga.
I want to be clear. This next episode is going to be spectacular for the SEO. Let me tell you.
I'll put Limp Bizkit first. Don't worry, we'll get millions of views. So he's gonna watch Jeremy's Beetle Bronies saga, and then I guess listen to those Beetle Bronies albums. Oh man, you're in for a real one with that. And then I will be listening to Limp Bizkit's chocolate starfish and the hot dog flavored water. And that is it. that is our next episode. Wow.
It was a solid 10 years that we've been doing this. I just want to reflect. Yeah, I just want to reflect back and think about all the good times we had. Remember when we talked about other things? That was one of my favorite moments.
Yeah, I liked the part where we
I like the part where we stay on a 2-week schedule.
Yeah, that was good.
That was really good. That was good for the fans.
But
for sure.
I'm certain we can nail 2 weeks for this. I don't see why that'll be a problem. I don't know,
for
Steven.
sure.
I don't know how you'll be able to watch 3 YouTube videos in 2 weeks. That's going to be pretty hard.
It'll take a lot out of me, but I'm up for the challenge.
All right, sweet. So I think we're wrapping it up here, right? Do you want to go ahead and play us out? What does that mean, to play us out?
Yeah. Sure. Those were our thoughts. Those were our recommendations. Get wrecked.